This can be super helpful for any singer. Who do you want to be remembered as? Not just on stage and the personality, the character, the alter ego that you take on stage, but when you're off stage and you're interacting with people still, how do you want to be remembered? So know what reputation you actually want to build and then step into that role, step into that person. Let's talk about lead singer syndrome, as Chris suggested. What it is, and actually we just take it from there. Let this be organic. We usually are. And if we think of topics along the way that are kind of related to it, I'm sure we'll explore those a little bit more too. But I would suggest, just so it's not an ADD session, that if something does come up, write it down. We can segue into that. So like we'll mention it, just take note of it, and maybe we can segue into that if we have time. Cool. Okay. So, Chris, since you brought it up, what is lead singer syndrome?
It is basically this idea that lead singers have a tendency to have this sort of character to them, this sort of ego, personality, or even just their overall presence that shows them as very charismatic, but can also appear to be, like I said, egotistical, maybe very in love with themselves, very sure of themselves, kind of like it's almost like they're losing a piece of their humanity at some point. They think that they're on top of the world. And, this is really great for performances, to show that charisma, to show that you're confident in your abilities. But some of them take that on in everyday life. And we have so many examples, larger than life personalities like Axl Rose, Sebastian Bach, for example, where that entire character is their personality. Some people are able to bridge the gap and only have that behavior and or activity on stage. Some, that is just a part of their everyday life. And I've noticed this a lot lately. There's a lot of singers that I've met, playing in the scene where that is just who they are. They're just this outrageous character, and it adds to their performance. And others, I, don't want to, toot my own horn by saying this, but I'm able to flip the switch on and off because I realize that is a character. And yep. I think that everybody has certain qualities of this lead singer syndrome. In fact, you could even compare it to lead guitarists. They have their own sort of leader kind of mentality going on. There's all those memes about them, when the mixing engineer tells you to turn down your amp, but you turn it up slightly. Yeah. And, I'd say it's the same thing for singers. I've seen a lot of performing singers who have their own little effects boxes, and they'll kind of go and crank up their gain a little if they don't think they're loud enough. Oh. And even though the mixing engineer is telling them like, okay, you're pretty much dimed out, you should probably, chill out. And they'll kind of just go, oh yeah, sure, buddy. And then start cranking up the gain on one of their...
Just to mention something on that, because I have to coach a lot of my students in this, is, whether you have distortion effects, which add a lot of compression, or you're turning up the gain on a pedal effect like that, the sound engineer loses control when you do that, and you're going to get a lot of feedback. There's a reason he doesn't want you to turn it up.
Oh, yeah.
There's a reason you want him to have control, because you start getting feedback and he can't do anything about it, you're screwed. Mm-hmm. So live, turn it down. Even if you like that distorted effect on your voice, turn it down so that the soundman's in control. And honestly, they're the person who makes you sound good. So don't piss them off. Make friends with them.
Mm-hmm. They control the sound of the room and the performance, and that's what people are there for. That's why they're paying money. So you want to be blending in with what they have set up for the whole gig too.
That was just nitpicking what you said.
No, I get it.
That's definitely a symptom of it. There's one thing to say about confidence. Mm-hmm. And we do interrupt each other a lot on this podcast, Chris. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, you're good.
There's one thing to say about confidence is awesome. confidence, even off the stage, is awesome. Confidence at the expense of others, it's a disconnect and you're losing people.
Yes. I'd like to give a decent example. Like when I was first recording with High Castle, I was not a very experienced singer. I, did not have my pitch was very relative, excuse me. And whenever I'd go into the studio, I thought I killed it. There was no touching me. So you thought
it was relevant.
Yes. But anyways, I thought I killed it. It was fantastic. And then they'd pull up something like Melodyne in front of me and I'd realize like, oh no, I was absolutely incorrect. And, it took me a really long time to get over that. But I think that sometimes confidence could be keeping us from reality. It took me a really long time to figure out like, oh, I just need to get good and sit in front of a piano when I don't understand exactly what it is I'm doing. And I've noticed there's a lot of singers who that confidence keeps them from improving.
Yes. I think there's something to say to that. When I talk about confidence, probably from a little bit different perspective than others, just because early on, I had a mentor who kind of nailed it into my head that I wasn't that great unless I took the audience there with me. And so I had to kind of change my passion from being, hey, look at me and I'm doing this perfect, to being about, am I connecting with people? Is this actually connecting with people? Is that a raw enough emotion that they get it and they join me in it? So that's a little bit different too. But so confidence from that perspective isn't so much about being confident you're doing great or how awesome you are on stage or in the recording studio or whatever. It's more about, hey, I'm about 85% of where I want to be, but that's what I've got and that's what I'm going to give them.
Yeah.
To me, that's a very important distinction, or the type of confidence you actually want, where you can deliver what you have, not think that you're way better than you actually are, or you're not listening to what others have to say about it.
Yeah,
or if
definitely.
They're connecting to it. Real quick, I want to let you know about our Rock Singing Success community. You want a place to discuss this topic further or other topics, a place where you can improve your voice and your music career with courses and other resources, and even have a community of like-minded singers in rock and metal that are on the same path. Those that support each other and encourage each other along the way. Then join us at school.com/rocksingingsuccess. And that's SKOOL.com/rocksingingsuccess.
One thing I think about too is something I've taught before, which is going into the character of everything, is like crying behind the mask. One, it's technical because you're using, cry vocal mode, but at the same time, you're wearing this mask, something that you can control, right? And when it goes to what you're talking about, Chris, with being able to switch it on and off, it is really important to realize that when you're performing, when you're recording, using that emotion, that character is important as the technique itself to get the takes you want, to connect with the audience. And then, but you need to realize, you take it off to be able to, in terms of like creativity for songwriting, right? You turn it on and then you let things distract you so you can come back to it and be able to just activate it like a muscle. And the same thing when it comes to the character that you're playing on stage or in the recording booth. Having control of that allows you to bring that sobriety to the writing process, to what you're doing it for, the intention, but then the character allows you to deliver the package, essentially.
Yeah. Like a perfect example, the band, one of my bands that I'm in, End Status, their previous vocalist, Derek, fantastic writer. His lyrics were deep on so many different levels, exploring just the vast emotions behind, the human psyche and all of those different questions that we have of morality. And the problem with it is he would get into this character by delving very deep into his own psyche. So he was basically almost causing himself mental breakdowns, emotional breakdowns each show. He had a lot of, extreme psychological problems, and he would, like I said, he would just drain himself, absolutely no end. And my guitarist mentioned that to me, and he said, and that's why, it's such a strange difference having you versus him, because when you have the microphone in front of your face, you switch to this like crazy animal who, is ready to go onto the battlefield and just absolutely cause chaos upon everybody. But then when that microphone's away from your face, you're just this quiet, reserved guy, soft voiced, and kind of just, mind your own business. And that really kind of stuck with me because I've noticed that with a lot of different singers. There are a lot of different singers, like even if they're doing covers, they'll really take on the emotions of the song, and you can actually see and feel them emoting those lyrics. And I've noticed that there are some people who take it really far, who you can tell that they're having, they're having an extreme issue with it, but they're able to kind of hold on to it in a certain way where, they're dealing, but you can tell they're struggling.
And I want to address that as well a little bit later, talking about the mental health as a singer and where that comes from. I wrote it down just so we have it there. But how does, just stay on topic for a bit, why is that confidence or that ego a bad thing? Why is having the ego? I want to come back to the mental health thing for sure. But why is being the lead singer, being so confident, being there really a bad thing? I understand you already talked about you weren't as good as you thought you were. Like going into the studio, putting Melodyne on your voice, Chris, it wasn't all what you thought. It wasn't realistic. But at the same time, that could still deliver an amazing performance. It's still a way to connect with people if you know how. But so what makes it a problem?
I feel like, from my perspective, the biggest issue is you lose connection. When you have such a big ego and you're unable to kind of bring yourself down to earth, you're not really able to connect with people because you're deluding yourself to thinking that you are so much further above, that you are the lead, you are the one in charge here. And as vocalists, I mean, as musicians, as people, one of the best things that we can do is connect. And that's what makes a performance so special for a lot of people. I mean, when we think of our first experiences going to a show or even just listening to some of our favorite bands, it's usually because something about that song connected to us and it made us feel some kind of emotion. And when ego is thrown into the mix, then the only thing you're thinking is like, oh, this guy thinks that they're so much better than they are, or they think they're so much better than me. I don't want to listen to this person.
I've seen it not be ego as well, like where it came across that way to the audience. But I got to a venue early one time for this one band that actually was an incredible band. I looked them up afterwards too because their music was awesome. But going in early, I heard the lead singer, they're from out of town, touring through. He was on the phone with his manager screaming in anger because things weren't set up how they were supposed to be. They weren't getting paid what they were supposed to. Like all sorts of stuff that had been contracted wasn't happening. And then when he got on stage, I was really looking forward to seeing him because they had awesome music. That anger held over. And so he's like, how are you motherfuckers out there? And we're like, okay, that's nothing normal. It's like, Denver sucks. And he started berating everybody. And he would do that, like they would play a song. It's like, okay, that was weird, but this is a good song. And then he'd do it again. And by the fourth time he did it, my friend and I just left. It turns out later on he did apologize for it and told the audience that he was angry at some stuff that had gone wrong. He's sorry for taking it out on them. But still, it came across as, well, this guy really thinks highly of himself and thinks everybody else is beneath him.
I think a lot of that. I'm sorry, go on.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, and I think that's the other side of it, because you're right. It's not just ego. I think it also, it can be a bit of like an inferiority complex. In my experience, going from, I mean, studying music in university, I keep saying I'm sorry. The instrumentalists would separate the vocalists, and they'd be like, there are the musicians and there are the vocalists. And I think that's really damaging to a vocalist's identity, because we are musicians. We might not know, theory as well as a piano player. I mean, most piano players, that's their whole job, is to look at a piano and say, oh yeah, they can see it all right in front of them. But that doesn't make us any less. That doesn't make us less of a musician just because we don't know all the things that they do. And so I think like that inferiority complex, not just from the side of being a musician, but like you're saying, the things weren't set up the way that he wanted them to be, that he wanted it to be. He felt like he wasn't getting paid enough money. Especially if you're reacting in anger, it's usually coming from a place of like, the things aren't set up the way I want them to be. That means something's going to go wrong, and then I'm going to have to feel bad about it or something. Or I'm not getting paid enough money because these people don't think that I'm worth enough, and that's the only way that I feel like I can't be enough. Not putting thoughts into this guy's head, but
then you can overcompensate. Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's not just ego. It's there's a lot going on in here too. So
And just to say, we all know that the drummer's the one that's not a musician. No, I'm just kidding.
Where's the melody? Are
I
you
can't
doing
do
it,
it.
drums?
with that.
Yeah,
I'm sitting here
I
agreeing
can't do
to,
their
like-
job. I can't do their job. So
I get
tried.
it.
I've tried drumming. It's fun, but oh my god, it's hard. Oh
it's
my-
hard.
People think piano players have to have this like split dexterity because of the both two hands. Drummers, oh my lord,
Oh yeah.
oh my god.
Well, it's like playing another piano with your feet.
Like
A second
No.
piano.
Some
Oh,
Eddie
yeah.
V action.
So hats off to drummers.
I saw this video recently of a guy who didn't have arms, and he was strictly playing a synthesizer with his tongue, and it was actually like fantastic. I was just like, okay, get it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Humans are amazing, man.
Yeah.
Humans are
Figure it out.
amazing.
We have a passion. We'll figure it out.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
But going back to what we were talking about, I've noticed there's one guy who I opened for when I was still doing the kind of high school band thing. It was like a iffy 3-piece where I didn't really know what I was doing, but I just wanted to get out there. And he's now kind of an internet personality. That band opened up for him. I'm not going to mention names because he probably wouldn't be very happy with this story, but he was openly berating his bandmates on stage. And he was talking about how he was, this is a song about night terrors. I'm not sure if any of you guys are going to understand, but here we go. And after that song, he would go on to berate said bandmates and go, all right, well, looks like this is going to be the last song of the night. The next band's probably going to be way better than these bunch of ingrates, so have a good rest of your night.
I get self-deprecation some,
yeah.
but man, it bothers me on stage. It bothers me so much. It's one thing to say it about yourself, but when you start making fun of other band members, and when it's scripted, I still have a little bit of an issue with it.
Yeah, it's one thing to be able to, self-deprecating humor works at some points. Like, for example, I was performing on stage once and I hopped off to try to bully people into starting more of a mosh pit. I was just like, okay, we got to be the instigator. Let's get these people moving. And I cracked a joke at the end of the song saying like, oh man, my ass is too fat to be climbing this high up on a stage. And I heard everybody laughing. It was fine. Just little things like that. I think it shows a little bit of humanity. Like if I'm able to make fun of myself and not take things so seriously, then, it might lighten up the performance a little, especially if the emotions are very heavy.
And to say something there as well, it's not that you can't be confident. It's that you got to watch your ego. You've got to watch how you're coming across and if you're connecting or not, because humor is very easy to fall into picking at the audience. And I've seen someone put it in their show. I'm now convinced they did. I think the band was called Scarlet, to where they had a heckler and he stopped the whole show, sat down at the front of the stage and talked to the guy. And it's like, what are you saying? I stole your toothbrush. Like, what are you talking about, man? But he didn't use it as a chance to berate the guy. He actually showed a different side of himself. Whether it was real or not, I'm not totally sure. But it definitely showed, oh, this guy actually cares. That was cool. Unlike, Bono getting on stage as Mephisto for decades, the encore song that they did every show, he would come in full makeup. And he was an asshole. But he was in character. And everybody knew that. And that, another example of humor, you want to, just to give the opposite side of that, you want to show humor that doesn't have all that ego in it and all the berating or anything like that. So legendary Pink Dots, very odd band. If you ever look them up, they put out multiple albums a year, live in Sweden. They were touring through the US. I went with a friend and he was like, this place is, we're getting in late. We're coming to the venue and it's all starving. It's like he was just talking about everything's closed. He said, and there it was like a beacon, Taco Bell. Like, had the whole crowd almost in tears laughing the way he was talking about it. But he told a story. He didn't use coming down on his band, coming down on the driver, coming down on the venue, coming down on the audience, none of that. So you got to be careful for overdoing it, because there's a point you lose connection versus using humor, using stories, using passion that actually connects with people and draws them closer to you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think that's where like a lot of the mask kind of comes in, right? It's like you're doing everything. I like the narrative side of things too, is you have like choreography, right? That's part of the narrative of the song. You have pieces that like say there's a heckler and you're talking to them and it gives that illusion of like that connection, breaking the fourth wall from the stage, making it feel like that personal experience we all want nowadays with modern musicians, right? We want to Instagram them and hear back from them, get mentions, all these things that make us feel more connected now than ever with everything being screens a lot of the time. So I think even online, right, you have to think about the ego and the way you post and things like that can ultimately, do more detriment than you would want. And then you have to check in on the ego, know where the intention's coming from for the music, your vocals in this case. And then I think putting on that mask on makes it easier to step back out when you need to.
Definitely.
There's also the other side of this where you do take on a character. And I've seen, just to kind of back up what you were saying there, Chris, too, is I have seen bands like, let's say, Van Halen with David Lee Roth at the front. That guy is really into himself. I don't know how he is personally, but on stage, he's really into himself, and it worked for him.
Oh, yeah.
He became the showman, even if he was way off pitch. Didn't matter. He was having fun, so was everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Freddie Mercury was the same way. Yeah.
Yeah. And I have seen those singers that are very obviously really into themselves on and off stage, and they can create amazing stuff. But your interaction with them, it's iffy. I know, like people, for instance, and I'm just throwing the name out there. There are people that have met Jared Leto at a concert and hate him now. But I've seen the opposite too. They thought he was the most awesome person ever.
I understand that, because when I went to go see 30 Seconds to Mars, I got VIP backstage passes. And I met him. I had a short conversation with him for about 10 minutes, him and his brother. And I just remember right as they came out, it was like he was lifting his arms up and just hoping for applause as he was walking into the room. And I kind of just went, all right, I already know where this is going. And my mom was the one who bought the tickets, so she, of course, was absolutely gushing over him while I'm kind of sitting there a little bit more in reality, kind of just going like, so he is a man. It is very obvious. And, but like just the way he would talk, like when he would answer questions, he would just be like, well, this and that and the other. And this
how
one
much
time,
of that was a character? How much of that was he was in character for his fans, for the show? I mean, you got to have some level of confidence there to start the cult of Mars and have camps in like Argentina or wherever, where they're all in white robes. And, you know, there's a level that doesn't seem genuine.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they're just having fun.
Yeah. 100%.
I remember right as I was about to take a picture with them, he saw the neck tattoo and was just like, whoa, bro, sick tats. And I was just like, thanks, man, you're going to like this one. And I showed him my ha 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 Joker one. And he just like, as the picture was being taken, I hear him just letting out a long drawn out like, oh shit, snap. And like that it was still going as like the snap from the camera hit. And, you know, my mom, like I said, was absolutely gushing over him, and she didn't catch any of those things, but maybe it's because I came in, you know, trying to, you know, kind of understand, okay, this man's a human being, and I've heard stories about him already. I want to see how far this goes. And I even noticed it further in the show. He has, you know, a desk right in front of him where he would keep his fancy crystal glass water bottles. And instead of putting them on the desk, he had someone specifically hired to hold their elbow on the desk, extend their arm out, and just hold on to that water bottle. The entire set. They played like an hour-long set, and he has these random roadies just holding water bottles in like an arm wrestling position on the desk just to, you know, hand him the water bottles that, you know, are within a foot from the desk that they should be placed on. And I noticed that and was just like,
So we're also talking here about the reputation you want to build.
Yeah.
So whether it's a character or not, or whether you're different with your friends than you are with your fans, you know, because they're beneath you, could be a thing. Or you have the ego to use an anagram of oral sex and call yourself Axl Rose. It's, I mean, we don't know what their personal life is like. We're going to sit up. So coming back to the listener, coming back to the people listening to this, what's the reputation you want to have? Because how you come across to every person, what that integrity is in on and off the stage or with your friends versus with your fans. And just not that you need to be best friends with all of your fans, but you can still treat them like human beings. You know, so what's the reputation you actually want to have there? And the little things like just a few stories, not in rock music. I'm sure you guys have some stories of this in rock too. I was talking about Bono, him bringing somebody on the stage, wrapping them in an American flag, and holding him in his arm and, you know, spinning around in circles with a camera. The random person from the audience that happens to be at every one of their concerts. But it's a point of connection. And then when I see little videos about, you know, Taylor Swift brings someone on stage. Okay. Yeah, you met a fan at the edge of the stage. I bet every bit of that was planned. And if it wasn't, then something's wrong with her security.
Yeah.
But then David Draymond walking up to the audience very genuinely and standing on the security barrier and saying, you know, you've been holding up this picture the whole time. What is it? And the girl talking about she just lost her best friend. And he brought her up on stage and dedicated a song to her best friend that had just passed. That was genuine.
Yeah.
He had never done that before. She was obviously super emotional. The people around her were trying to support both of them in that conversation. It's like there was a lot of real there that just couldn't be created otherwise. It would have come across different in theater, you know?
yeah, absolutely.
But he has that reputation of being accessible. But so does Taylor, and she does other things too. So does Bono in a lot of ways because he designed it that way.
Did you ever see David Draymond's interview about, you know, how he was, I believe Disturbed was opening for Ronnie James Dio at one point. And we, you know, if you know about Ronnie James Dio, he is definitely a character. Yeah. And he was, you know, one to not, you know, don't mess with him. You know, he may have been a tiny little fellow, but he grew up in the streets and he was rowdy. And Draymond finally got a chance to talk to him, and he said, oh, just what do you do for warm-ups? Like, what's your background? This and that. And Dio just kind of like chuckles at him and goes, warm-ups are for pussies, and then goes on stage.
Okay.
And I don't know why. Just the second I saw that interview and heard that, I immediately knew, like, yep, that sounds correct. That is valid.
I believe it.
And, going back to David Draymond, there's also, he very genuine performer. He is not afraid to show he's not afraid to show humanity on stage. But also going back to the topic of discussion, there's a video that came out recently. Apparently there was a woman in the stands. They were playing a theater show, and he noticed that she was on her phone for a majority of the set. And he openly berated her for it in front of the entire crowd, talking about how it's rude and how she should have more consideration for the feelings of the performers if she's going to pay that much money and take up a seat that somebody else could have taken. Mm-hmm. And I've noticed there's a lot of squabbles between performers and the actual people who attend the shows because, some people aren't, everybody has their phone out now, whether it's for recording videos, for taking selfies with their girlfriends, etc. And I've noticed a lot of arguments about, all these fans having their phones out and recording videos. And some people get really upset about it, and others just go, it's just a part of the times.
At what point do you accept this is what it is and this is what I'm working with versus having to fight against the people in the audience? And that's a reputation thing too. And I'm sure he pissed a few people off that night when he berated somebody on their phone and probably lost a few fans over it. Yeah. So there's that side too. I don't know when my friend met Jared Leto in the crowd how he was handling himself or what he was dealing with at the time. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or if he was super high when he was backstage with you, Chris. I mean, we don't know. We don't know. Yeah. But we do know reputation. And we do know when you treat people the same way over and over, there's a pattern. And you get to be known for that.
Yeah.
Versus being able to, sure, maybe you berated someone one concert, but most of the time you're very vulnerable and open and show care that you care about people. That's different.
Yeah.
That's different. And people will be forgiving.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
I do have to say, going back to this now, the idea of being vulnerable, the idea of opening yourself up, and even if it's stepping into character for the stage, you still, there has to be some separation there. There has to be, and a way to handle it. So now we're getting back into more the mental health side. Mm-hmm. And Chris, what you mentioned with the last singer, kind of reminds me of the idea of, well, in magic, it's the idea of summoning demons, where you're pulling up a part of your personality. Carl Jung called it shadow work, where you bring those things to the surface on purpose and you integrate them into who you are so that you can actually deal with them instead of trying to push them away. But when we're a singer and we're on stage and every song has its own emotion and we're trying to connect with the audience and we still want to be our own person, and then off the stage we know, okay, these people are not my best friends. It's a very different type of connection. Now you're surrounded with a bunch of people who want your attention. What do you do? So I could totally see that driving a person mad. You're wearing 20 different hats as the singer, just as the singer of the band, not necessarily even on stage. Now you're adding even more, and you're adding all these other characters that you're having to bring to the surface depending on the song you're singing. That's willful disassociation. You know, that you're changing identities. You're putting on alter egos constantly. So what do you guys have to say about that? Let's leave that open.
I can connect to this a lot with not just from the rock background, but from the theater background as well, where you genuinely have to put on all these different faces when you have a character, and when you're a lead singer and you have that you've fabricated a character, you've brought out, maybe it is your shadow to say like, okay, I'm going to use this as a form of catharsis, and I think if you shift the mentality when you are performing a song from I need to submerge myself into this emotion because it's such a a traumatic experience that I or someone else had. So I need to know what that feels like to be able to express it, using it as again, like a cathartic release to say, I'm letting this go. Me screaming about this on stage is me physically letting it out of my body, so that when you walk out of there, you're not holding that anymore. You walk off stage and you know that you had just allowed that out, and now it no longer needs to be with you. I tell my students all the time, I say, we connect, we find the meaning, we find what we're trying to feel and what we're trying to say, but we don't hold on to it. We sing, it's gone. We don't need to bring it back unless we need to for another song. But as soon as you walk off that stage, it is done. You need to.
I love that, man. You're like catharting all over the place.
Yeah.
To quote Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Sorry.
That was good.
That was good.
So I can see that side of it too, as well as the idea of allowing. Well, you got to be really genuine with yourself already to know you deal with these different things, but allowing yourself to bring those characters forward for a time. And it's not that it's you're becoming someone else. This is not method acting. It doesn't have to be anyway, where you become that person. Dustin Hoffman is Hook. It comes to mind. I know it's an old movie, but people could not stand to be around him because he stayed in character off screen too. Mm-hmm. And he was a terrible person for that character. You don't have to go that extreme. You can bring those characters, the many faces, the 50 Shades of Draven Grey, to the... Oh, God, that's a terrible reference. I still want an album called that, but...
It's okay.
I'm going to keep laughing.
You caught me. I'm interested.
Okay, A Picture of Draven Grey, the other album I want to make. But where you can put on many faces, but still be you at your core. You're showing different sides of you, rather than a completely different character, or pulling this well of emotion up to the surface. That's different to me than just passion. The way I had to define it, because I understood the well of emotions. I understood being raw in your emotion and losing yourself in the song so that other people could join with you, and they had that permission to do so. But I think you can go way too far with that. And I started calling it romancing the music, because it's not really the subject matter that you're getting lost in. It's the emotion of the music itself. That's what you're capturing. That's why you have songs that are super sad, but really poppy and fun to listen to, or vice versa.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the singer's into the music.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm just thinking of a certain song that falling to pieces. I'm thinking that because I've been going over covers that I've done on piano, and that's one of them. And super poppy song, terrible subject matter as far as like just heart wrenching. And you listen to the words, it's like this guy's gonna hurt himself and others if somebody doesn't do something. But it's really poppy and fun. And I did a cover of it for a student where I took it down to a ballad. It's like, holy crap, this is depressing.
Ooh.
Yeah, the juxtaposition is useful. To be able to step out from like a character that's singing about the lyrics to this is the intention I have for like almost like a product. And then that allows you to kind of separate from it a little bit.
What is the emotion of this? Not what are the lyrics actually saying? And that's something I've had to coach some students in who are in musical theater as well. Because in musical theater, it is about what you're singing. It's about the words you're saying. And that's what you're expressing. That's what you're focused on delivering to the audience, because you're telling the story of the lyrics specifically. In rock music, it's usually more about the music. And there are so many songs we love to sing along to we don't actually know the words to. So many.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Another good example of that is James Blunt, You're Beautiful. Like you think, oh, this is he sees a girl, he's absolutely, just enthralled by her presence and, wishes that he could speak to her, but just doesn't. And then you find out when you actually read the lyrics that, oh no, he's just some random guy high on cocaine at the subway and sees this pretty girl and goes like, man, you're beautiful. And like, it blew my mind because I thought this was just a simple case of I see pretty girl, cannot have pretty girl, I am sad. And it gets so much deeper once you actually really delve into the lyrics. And
Yeah. Sometimes it's not really about the lyrics. Listen to Chase Holfelder's version of Chase Holfelder did a lot of songs in a minor key. That's where most people have heard of him. Like starting with "I Will Always Love You," and it was kind of sad, and it was good though. And then he did Disney's "Kiss the Girl."
Yeah.
So you take this very innocent thing in the movie about "Kiss the Girl," and it's kind of this cute romantic scene. You put it in a minor key, and suddenly it's a stalker. Oh, the music totally changed the context of the lyrics. There's a lot to say for getting lost in the music of the song and expressing the emotion of the music and the passion of the music versus the lyrics.
Definitely.
There's there's another one with that Justin Bieber's boyfriend, and then Punko's Pop did, I think it was Issues did it, and I showed it to my cousin, and because she liked Justin Bieber. And if I was your boyfriend, never let you go. And they're, if I was your boyfriend. And she's like, I'm terrified of this man. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. And she brought that up like, oh no, it's now he's a creep.
Why is he so aggressive?
Oh my God.
Yep.
Yeah. I think one cool thing is when you explore kind of that idea we're talking about where you're moving things into different places, like you're still the same you when it comes to like songwriting and such, to kind of find that mask, maybe that character or the emotion in general you're trying to pull out. But I like to try and test different genres. And it's still the same source, right? So when you go through like the lyric writing process and you just begin to let out the natural words that you're feeling that day. Like an example would be scatting through a song with no lyrics already written, just raw music, finding what's kind of coming out, and you capture that to lean into, okay, this is the character that I'm developing here. And then through different genres, you start to see things in different contrasts, like an actors in different movies. You're like, oh, it's something that's almost like tangible now. It's like, that's generally what I talk about when it comes to this emotion that the music pulls out of me. And that's helped ground me in like, okay, this is truly something that I tap into, and directing it and challenging it helps you kind of discover its use as like a tool, rather than I've gotten stuck in for a long while being in like thrash metal and getting the high notes. I'm like, I'm the guy, right? And you're like, okay, we're doing tours and things like that. And it was compensation because I didn't really believe in myself. So then that mask you wear becomes like, it starts to fake it till you make it, till you become it. And then it was the other way around for the whole idea of that confidence piece or ego for the lead singer. Now it's like, I'm trying to work it back. And then that was a process of a long time of like, not trying to self-deprecate, but to understand like, and be honest with yourself. And then that can take a lot of practice, a lot of, I think, perspective from others is huge, because like your music is intended for, an intention you set in your music can be interpreted differently by different people. Just like when you're talking with other people on their perspective of your troubles, the way you look at the world, it starts to build, you start to become relational with your view on everything and other people's. And then you can slowly through that process, like testing different genres, getting different perspectives from people, start to extract the source that you kind of, your place in all of it. And then you can start expanding the toolbox. You're like, I know all the tools now because this requires an 808 drop. This requires heavy compression on the kicks. So things like that help you like, I don't know, find that exploration and the way to be, and when you're consistent with it, you can tap into it, but also a way to differentiate the reality of things that is your perspective comparatively to others and other genres. So 2-in-1 there, but
there's a lot to be said here for, we have to cut this in a bit, but there's a lot to be said here for knowing yourself really well, but also, and this speaks to what you just said, Drew, is spending some time coming up with who you want to be remembered as. I remember when I had the choice to go either acoustic folk and acoustic rock or go heavier, and I chose to go heavier because I'd been doing both for years, and I wanted to actually focus on one and build it. And so I had to sit down and say, well, who is Draven Gray? Who is that to people? So I drew out, like, I'm an artist too, so I like drew out some things, some images of me on stage, and was thinking about, what's the reputation I want here. This can be super helpful for any singer. Say, who do you want to be remembered as? Not just on stage and the personality, the character, the alter ego that you take on stage, but when you're off stage and you're interacting with people still, how do you want to be remembered? Like this is not about just being who you are, stepping into character and staying in character. It's not about just it's not about just letting it be whatever it is either. It's about purposefully spending time to say, I'm building a brand, I'm building a reputation, I'm building like some integrity as well here, but like, who do I want to be seen as by people who like our music? Good to do as a whole band too, but it's like not just what you're passionate about and what you're good at and what you sound like and the emotions that you tend to give them, the actions you inspired them to take, but also who do you want to be remembered as a person, as the singer of that band or solo act, whatever. Just who do you want to be to your fans? Do you want to be accessible? If that freaks you out, that's okay. You're in good company. There are a lot of mega stars that have agoraphobia. They don't like being around fans. That's okay. You find another way to connect with them and to make it feel like that you're still cool. You're not egotistical. And heck, could you just be letting them know? It's like being around a lot of people freaks me out. I'm going to try, guys, but and there are ways to still connect with your fans there. Or is it that you generally don't like other people? There's still ways to convey what you have to say and the performance you have to give that connects with people, even when you genuinely don't want to be around a whole lot of people. So you're not mingling with them after the show. That's fine. You're not making personable videos on social media. Why would you do that if you don't enjoy doing it? Why would you do anything if you don't enjoy doing it? It's not worth it. That's not you. So being genuinely yourself and knowing what reputation you're building, that is by design. So know what reputation you actually want to build. Mm-hmm. And then, like Drew was saying, step into that role, step into that person. Okay, guys, I know we're running out of time here. So do y'all have anything else to add?
I don't think so.
I don't know. That was definitely a good way to touch on that and to end it. Definitely do things with purpose and with integrity and find that fine line between I am a god and I am a human.
Yep.
Yep.
Reality. And something that a lot of people are, this is going into like psychology, is one of the biggest parts about making sure that you're able to correct any certain behaviors or any certain personality problems or anything like that is you have to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and find out the things that you don't like. And sometimes I'm speaking from personal experience myself, but these things are very hard. It's very hard to be able to look into the mirror and realize like, oh, I might be the problem. And, as I've had to experience that myself, it's also one of the most grounding things that I've ever done for myself. I was able to understand, like my last relationship, for example, I was able to understand that, okay, I probably was being a bit of a jerk at points. And, I realized like, oh, I have a problem with reacting to certain things if I'm feeling defensive. And, I didn't like looking at that. I thought that, in those moments, I was just an innocent victim. And it turns out, no, I was not. And, those are the questions that you have to ask yourself sometimes. And even as a performer, you have to ask yourself, Like, I want people to see me in a certain light, but I also don't want them to have a certain idea of me that is unfavorable. You have to really be able to bridge the gap and use that integrity to understand, like, okay, these are the things that I need to work on in order to improve this character.
I want to say as well in that, and having been a relationship counselor and stuff too, it just reminded me of this. Sometimes our upbringing brings us to constantly, or things that have happened in our lives brings us to constantly ask, what did I do wrong? That's not the right question. But neither is, I didn't do anything wrong. That's not the right approach either. Because now you're taking the high ground, and now there's that ego again. You're getting in the way of seeing the way things actually are without judgment of how they are. So the healthy thing is to, again, approach it, when this happened, I felt this, or approach it without judgment, not to say things went wrong. And I'm sure everybody had a piece to play in it. You can't change the other person. You can't change the way the audience perceives you, for instance, but especially in a relationship, you can't change the other person. You're going to get this in your band a lot with other band members. So it's not looking at it as what I do wrong or taking the stance of I didn't do anything wrong. It's taking the stance of how did I contribute to this and how can I move it the direction that I would like it to go? It's a very different question. You're not judging anybody. You're not even saying what you did was wrong or right. Saying, how did I contribute to this happening? How can I move it the right direction or the direction I would like it to go? Because now you're being more inclusive. Yep, that's really the question. How can I learn from this?
Yeah.
I'm a little bit more active, though, to say, how can I, you're changing yourself in this sense. How can I move this direction I would like it to go? Because now you're including the other people in it, too.
Yep.
All right. All right, we got to get going, guys. That was great conversation. Look forward to having a lot more.
Yes.
Awesome.
Now, remember, if you want a place to discuss this topic further and other topics too, a place where you can improve both your voice and your music career with courses and other cool resources, unlockable resources even, and a community of other rock and metal singers on the same path. We'll support you, encourage you along the way, just a cool community to be with. Then join us at school.com/rock singing success. Now, over my last 30 years as a professional performing musician, music career coach, and rock singing coach, I've helped hundreds of in-person students and thousands of students in my courses. So I created the Rock Singing Success community to offer you even more help on your journey. Again, that's school.com/rock singing success. That's SKOOL.com/rock singing success. Join us there. Let's continue this discussion. See you there.